The category is What the Trans, darling?
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of What the Trans.
What the trans?
Yes, What the Trans. I'm surprised it's still so much of a question for you. That was,
I mean,
that was a very questioning tone. What the trans?
We hear, I think, 98 episodes of What the Trans. You sort of add a bit of an extra spin on it for the sake of it.
You want to put a bit of flair on it? Yeah, absolutely, fair enough. How are you?
I'm doing well, it's a lovely Thursday afternoon, evening. Oh god, it's this again. And, I've sort of been chilling out. I think last weekend we went to see the Cirque du Soleil.
Yes.
Which was really fun. The Royal Albert Hall.
Yeah, fancy venue. I've never been in there. I mean, I don't live in London or near it, so a bit tricky to just pop down to the Royal Albert Hall. Yeah, just dead easy for me to do. But yeah, so you enjoyed it then, yes?
Yeah, exactly. So, for those who don't know, the Cirque du Soleil is just basically I think some people would say a circus on some steroids.
Okay.
In a way, it's sort of like it's like, you get your travelling circus where they have about 3 or 4 motorcycles going around in that big circle thingy, but instead it's like 10 or something,
right.
Or mad. And it was like an amazing show, and if anyone ever has it coming to the area, it's well worthly watch.
Yeah, it does come to Manchester, but I shall take that under advisement. Also, I thought it was Cirque du Soleil.
Oh, yeah, it is. I keep messing up the name. Cirque du Soleil.
Yes.
Maybe that, yeah, I'll just...
Circus of Sunshine.
We'll just let everyone... yeah, exactly. We'll just let everyone ram us in the comments on that one.
Yes.
Sounds like you had less of a fun week from what I've heard.
Yeah, it wasn't the most exciting thing. So as part of... I promise I will keep this brief. It looks like I might have either a gluten intolerance or celiac. So to test for sure, I had to eat gluten and then go and have a gastroscopy, aka an endoscopy. It's where they put you swallow a camera, basically, and the camera pokes around inside your stomach and guts for sort of 10 minutes or so, and then comes back out again.
As it would.
Yeah, well, as one would hope.
As one would hope, exactly. You don't want to...
It was just really strange because they'd given me some stuff that sedates you, right? So it doesn't put you to sleep, it just makes you compliant, essentially, and resting comfortably. And so but they also gave me some spray that numbs the back of your throat, and they say, okay, I'm just going to give you some spray that'll numb the back of your throat and it'll make it difficult to swallow. Now swallow this camera. Like, talk about burying the lead.
Oh yeah, that sounds... I think from what I can recall, those cameras are quite big.
It was a chunky boy, yes. So because everybody I know who's ever had one of these things said, oh, it was really unpleasant, I didn't like it, they offered me an option to take the sedation and not really remember it. So I said, yes, please, I'll do that. And it was fine, because to the extent where I remember swallowing the thing, and then I remember them saying, okay, we're done. And I was really surprised when they said, okay, we're done, because it felt like it had only been a minute or two. But clearly that whole resting comfortably thing, as they wrote in my notes, more just kind of was a bit out of it. So yeah, it was fine, honestly. So yes, if you have to have an endoscopy, ask them if you can take the sedation, because yeah, it is definitely not something you want to remember. Particularly.
Reminds me of that episode of Doctor Who with the Star Whale or whatever, the second episode.
Of Matt Smith's, yeah.
Press the button to forget all what you've done.
Oh God, yeah. But I'm sure you didn't tune into this podcast, dear listener, to hear me talk about my many medical procedures, because if you wanted to listen to someone talk about their medical procedures, you'd just phone your gran. So,
yeah.
Let's crack on with the thing that we are here to do, shall we? First and foremost, we have, what is it we've got now? What is it? Oh no, not the news.
Yes, I know the news.
Yeah, well, that's our whole thing, and that's what you've once again decided to subject yourself to, dear listener. So, thanks for doing that. And our first story is, well,
so this time it's the EHRC again. So to continue our story covering the departure of the chief executive of EHRC, we asked the press office for a statement on the departure of Martial Boot, just in case they might mention something extra, a bit of extra stuff that they might not have mentioned on the website. But unfortunately, even though we got a statement, it was quite boring. In the statement, Baroness Faulkner said, "After 2 years leading the Equality and Human Rights Commission, our chief executive Martial Boo has decided to move on to new regulatory challenges. In departing, Martial expressed his thanks to the board for the opportunity and to staff and stakeholders of EHRC with whom he worked. We in turn thank him for his professional service to EHRC and wish him the very best for the future." This statement is just stating that there was no ill will and nothing out of the blue. However, the person at the press office at the EHRC then asked if we had any more questions. So we were like, you know what, why not? We'll mention some of the rumours we heard. So we mentioned the reports of Martial launching the investigation into Faulkner, just saying we have no further comments to add onto the matter of Martial Boo's tenure as chief executive at this time. We also in the email asked when a new chief executive would be in place. However, all we have is that it will be made in due course.
In due course, yes, indeed.
In due course.
So we wanted to find out if they would confirm whether Martial Boo was the one who launched that investigation into Faulkner, but they didn't confirm a thing, which I'm not sure I was expecting them to, but, I mean, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Yeah, pretty much. It's that sort of like, I didn't expect to get anything, but I think I was just listening to re-listening into our pod episode, to check everything was all right, and then I saw a mention of the EHRC, and it just came up to the idea of it, and I was like, yeah, I'll just see.
So yeah, unfortunately, nothing to see here, isn't it? It's just a case of their telling us nothing.
Nothing.
I think as we kind of expected, although it would have been nice if they'd actually said something, but we have nothing further to add at this time. Like, okie dokie. But they love that phrase, in due course, don't they? Because that can,
exactly.
That can mean so much. As in, yeah, we're never going to do it. Or, yeah, we will do it, but in a year or so when everyone's forgotten about it.
Yeah, or like, we're just adding this trap for Labour if they come into power sort of thing with in due course to say now or ages away.
Yeah. So moving on to our next story then, and this week we have an episode of Calm Down, Kemi Badenoch. We bring you the news that the current Equalities Minister, Kemi Badenoch, will apparently insist that when companies collect the gender pay gap data, that any companies that have more than 250 people working for them have to, they do so on the basis of biological sex. Now, this came after she learned that Whitehall officials tend to advise firms to collect such data on the basis of how their employees identify. Now, according to our old mates, The Telegraph, this was prompted by a letter from a Dr. Kate Coleman, who is the director of the Keep Prisons Single Sex campaign, which appears to be yet another astroturfed anti-trans group under the banner of Defending Women's Spaces. In her letter, Coleman wrote, "The GEO guidance is based on an incorrect and frankly perverse interpretation of the gender pay gap regulations."
Perverse?
Yes. And frankly perverse. Just so many pearls are being clutched here. And then, we strongly recommend that GEO guidance is corrected to ensure that the protected characteristic of sex, as registered at birth, is used as the basis for gender pay gap reporting, as this will be consistent with your updated guidance and with relevant regulations. Someone described in the Telegraph and Mail as a source close to the minister, so that could mean anybody really, potentially the office cat, but is quoted as saying, "We are constantly finding this sort of stuff buried in Whitehall guidance and regulations. We're glad Kate has brought it to our attention and we're looking very closely at what we can do about it." So, Kate, not Dr. Coleman, not the director of the campaign, just Kate. First name basis, evidently. As a result of a quote-unquote concern being raised by the people with the right accent and regulation tweed, the Government Equalities Office may well now change their long-standing guidance. So did you see this week?
I think one of our news hounds actually sent that over to us as look at this story. I think
Yes,
this is something
indeed.
we need to mention. And I was like, really, Kemi? Oh, look, here's your money. Tell us what genitals you have so we can put that in our equal pay thing. It's just stupid.
Yeah, indeed. And it just seems like So you know how we've said that the organised anti-trans lot have got government ministers and, managing editors of the Times and the Telegraph and the Mail have got their numbers on speed dial, and they've obviously got their addresses in what I assume is a classic Rolodex as well, where they can just write a letter and potentially change government policy if
On the
it's
fly.
if it's something that will be worse for trans people if it's implemented.
As we said, we decided we didn't like how a specific process is ran. Let's just complicate it in a definition of sex, which is yet to be defined by the Equality and Human Rights Commission in the first place, for them to base any kind of guidance of. And from the Equality Act, which this would only apply if they made the amendments, which they decided not to. So they're sort of trying to force a definition that really isn't in active practice in the first place, and has been established in case law for the past God knows how long. I'm not a lawyer, but still.
No, none of us is a lawyer, unfortunately, in fact, because otherwise the episodes would be much, much longer.
Gosh, yeah.
As we go through absolutely everything that the government's done, which is of questionable legality, we'd be here. I think we'd probably never stop recording, I think.
I'm sure there's another set of podcasts that does that for us.
Yeah, quite. So, yes, fun times, slightly frustrating, but so it was Annalise Dodds that said that Kemi Badnoch needs to stop obsessing over trans people, and specifically obsessing over toilets. She needs to stop doing that and get on with her job, and it's kind of hard to disagree, really.
Yeah, especially when you're seeing this.
Yes. Fuckers.
And of course, Annalise Dodds has probably got a busy week in front of her with her own co-workers.
Yes, indeed. So we're calling this next part of the show Love's Labour's Lost, for alliterative reasons, but not lost in the sense that they are lost to us irretrievably, but more in the way that it's like they're all in a car that's lost, going full pelt towards a wall, but rather than turning the wheel or putting the brakes on, they're too busy arguing over whose fault it is. That kind of lost.
Smashing. Or hopefully not smashing.
Yeah,
Maybe. Who knows?
Very good, very good.
Firstly, we'll just fill in some details we didn't get a chance to on our last pod. On the most recent episode, we spoke about Laura Pascal standing as a Labour candidate in the Cazenove ward in Hackney, and just had time to mention that she lost the election. We talked about her repeating airing of anti-trans views and her lack of apology of doing so. Indeed, she changed her Twix bio to say, unapologetic for my gender-critical views, shortly after publishing an apology on social media. But she lost the election. Unfortunately, she's still lost it to a Tory, so it remains to be seen whether that's actually an improvement or not. She pulled in 31% of the vote, with her Conservative opponent, Ian Shearer, receiving 56.8%. Side note, what a weird name for a Tory, Mr. Shearer. They hear that sort of thing, surely.
Right? That's like saying, and here's my brother, Mr. Communist! Yeah, so that was just a bit of quick news that we had last time, because remember, we had to record the last episode in 2 different segments, didn't we, because of that microphone issue I had. So we just had time to say, but she lost the election, so...
Yeah, it was like 2 hours before the results came out or something when we
when we recorded it the first time, but then when we recorded it the second time, it was a few days later. So it was like, well, we're already re-recording almost the entire podcast, so let's just do a quick drop-in and we'll do more detail next time. So now it's next time, and there you go. She did indeed lose the election. I would be interested to see if that transphobia made the crucial difference to the voters in Hackney, but I saw somewhere that the overall polling was like 3,000 and something, which I don't know how many people live in Cazenove ward. I don't know if that's good or not, but that's not loads of people, is it really?
No, exactly. I think with my slight dabbling with local politics and, like, they're very petty in how some people are just really petty in how they vote for elections, and it's more about the local council running rather than actual thing. So people will probably be more angry at, there's a housing estate that developers want to build that might provide affordable housing, let's oppose it, because NIMBYs are the most fucking irritating people in my existence. I just want to knock them a few because they're all annoying, and the ones that I know in my particular area are particularly nasty people. But that's going off on a tangent that's not related to this.
Still, it's, you've got experience in local politics, which fine, not in the same area as Hackney, but I think there are some elements of local politics that are going to hold as kind of true and expectable, is that a word? I don't know, to be expected wherever you are.
Yeah, exactly. It could just be, oh no, they've introduced a parking fees for this specific street, which now makes my life annoying. I'm going to vote against the person in power who might just be Laura Pascal.
Yeah, well, I mean, she's not the person in power, woohoo! But you've now got a Tory person. This district was only created in, I think, 2002, and it's been Labour and the Lib Dems who've traditionally held this, so this is the first time a Conservative has won this ward, which...
Yeah, that's a bit of a turnaround, especially considering I would have been about 1 when the initial... not to make our listeners feel old.
Yeah, well, you never know how old the listeners are, but you're making me feel old, so thanks for that. I was at college in 2002, so...
Oh, goodness, yeah.
Yeah, my first day of college... Well, sorry, my second day of college was September the 11th, 2001. Which is a day where some stuff happened. You might have heard about it.
No.
Yeah, and it was weird because I'd been in New York the previous week.
Oh, that's lucky, isn't it? That's a lucky shave.
So I've got a photograph in one of my photo albums of the Twin Towers on, I think, September 7th, 2001. And we were flying out of JFK Airport on like the second to last sunset the World Trade Center's ever got. And it was such a weird day. I think it was for everybody, except for you, because you were a babe in arms, you lucky devil. But we all got to watch the world change and things never really got better again. Anyway.
Happy news.
Wait, that was...
And now we move on to the more positive stuff. Wait.
Oh, wait, no, yeah. Well, that was definitely a bit of a tangent, which I make no apologies for. So, sticking with Labour, though, and you're probably fully aware of the name I'm about to say next, Wes Streeting. In a recent Sky News interview, it was reported that Labour's Shadow Health Secretary had seemingly announced a ban of trans women on women's single-sex wards in hospitals. It's a different kind of ward to the ward that we were just talking about with Laura Pascal.
What?
This is a ward in a hospital. Now, when we listened into the interview, there were some details and a bit of, context and some nuance that we have put in here, essentially, including a certain amount of reading the words under a microscope and particularly looking between the lines. So, in a clip of the interview which was shared online by Sky News, Wes Streeting had said, "We've got to put patient safety first," when speaking about single-sex wards in hospitals. Now, this was very widely reported in the LGBT press as signalling a change in Labour's stance on trans rights and suggesting trans women could be barred from hospital wards, usually made this suggestion in very, very big letters. Now, firstly, there's a tiny little bit of extra context to this, and it comes in the form of a tweet by Moya Lothian McLean, which reads, "Not to defend Wes Streeting, but this clip is from a wider segment about sexual harassment in the NHS, where Wes actually says the Conservatives are using trans people as scapegoats prior to this exchange. Sky chose to clip this moment up." So, what's going on there, Wesley? Kinda contradictory.
Shut up, Wesley.
Yeah. Kinda contradictory to say we're being used as scapegoats and then later in the same interview kinda use us as scapegoats, wouldn't you say? Maybe a little bit, yeah. The full quotes are, "It should not be beyond the realms of possibility to have wards for women, wards for men, and also suitable, safe accommodation for trans people too." After saying that, he was pressed by the Sky News presenter Sophie Ridge to clarify if he meant trans people should be put on different wards, and he said, "No, I think the best thing, both to protect the dignity and respect of trans people and also to maintain the integrity of single-sex spaces, is to make sure we've got single-sex wards, and I think that would be the right and appropriate appropriate way forward. And then a little bit later on, when talking about the reported abuse on mixed-sex wards, at the moment we've got the awful situation where, as you said, mixed-sex wards achieved record levels, I'm guessing of sexual harassment, and that's not what we want to see. We want to see single-sex spaces because they are safer spaces and people, particularly women, feel much more comfortable and safe in women-only wards. And the evidence bears that out too, and we've got to put patient safety first. Now, we are not 100% sure what evidence he's referring to, given that a study performed in 2022 showed that there have been literally no cases whatsoever of someone complaining about abuse from a trans woman on a mixed-sex ward. But okay, by having this conversation on Sky News, Streeting seems to have broken ranks with the rest of the Labour Party, which we'll come back to them in a minute. But first, what did you make of all of this? Because there was discourse around this, wasn't there?
I'm very glad that I haven't said anything on social media on it yet, or at all, because when it comes to talking about this, it's probably best to put this in a long form conversation of a podcast like this, because from what I was hearing, as you said, there's a bit of nuance to this. I think one particular bit that stood out in particular, I mean, first to say, Labour have been utter shite and have put trans people in, have just stabbed trans people in the back with the lack of support that was, quite frankly, the Democrats in America have put Labour to shame on this. But as journalists, we've got to put a bit more objectiveness into how we report this and unfortunately, like Pink News and such have not quite read into the lines like we're going to be doing here. But the first bit is when Sophie Ridge said, should trans people be put on separate wards? He said, no, I think. The word... Usually, you don't get a yes or no answer from a politician, but when they say, should we be separated, there was a no, and then I think, and then to say the best thing is both to put the dignity of trans people, but then also, the shitty bit is how he says, no, let's not have mixed-sex wards, but then pushes for the single-sex wards, and I think some people have also said that Annalise Dodds' line and what Keir Starmer has been particularly careful. And I think this is where you have to look at it with the microscope on this one, because we really shouldn't need them to make us do this.
To me, the way I've read it is that he's kind of trying to have it both ways, which I know is something that and not in a fun, sexy both ways kind of way, as in, like, trying to have it both ways. Here, I'll say something that will appease trans people and also people that really hate trans people, by saying that we should preserve the dignity of trans people, but also have single-sex wards. And it's like, okay, so if we're going to have kind of separate facilities, are we going to be apart in some way? Are we going to be hidden away like some sort of apartheid?
Yeah, that's the interesting bit on that one, because when it comes to Labour's stance on the Equality Act itself, they said they don't want to change it. And the current sort of definitions of the Equality Act so far, which they want to keep, is sort of like gender reassignment is sort of like... at the moment, is sort of like inclusively for single-sex spaces is for self-identification. They sort of want to... So, in a way, they're sort of saying we want single-sex spaces, but then also say we want to keep the work of the Equality Act in another section. But if you didn't know the context of what Labour's stance is on the Equality Act, I mean, it sucks to defend them like this, but you sort of have to add that extra bit in. But if you haven't, it's that sort of thing where we've had to look at this with a big microscope.
I've said, it sounds to me like he's trying to appease both camps. Yeah. So is that what did you make of it all? Just kind of initial impressions.
When I first listened to it, I think when it was shared on the Newshounds chat, I was like, okay, I need to have a listen to this just in case, because there was like a whole thing with the education guidance where Annalise Dodds went, we welcome the publication of the consultation of the guidance, which then says we welcome the consultation, not the guidance itself. So it's sort of, I was trying to, when I first listened to it, it was sort of like, have they done we're saying we're supportive, but actually weaseling, like disgusting, weaseling their way through things, which, they shouldn't be needing to weasel, they should just be full-throated saying, Trans people
should be respected and transphobes' views shouldn't. You kind of wish that that judgment had been allowed to stand, the one that said that the transphobes' views are not worthy of respect in a democratic society, but unfortunately they appealed it and that got kind of struck from the record, which is a shame because that's accurate.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they're essentially saying, no, trans people are icky and I want them kept far away from me. NIMBYs, again.
Oh, exactly.
To an extent.
Oh, yeah, definitely. NIMBYs, but for trans people instead of housing developments. Or
NIMBYs, but for genitals.
Labour, you need to do better than just relying on technicalities, which I have to then point out very specifically, because that is not what I should be doing. They're trying to appease, because they're still, in the end, trying to, as you said, trying to appease transphobes. We've seen lots of comments doing the rounds about this, which I'm going to say pink news because they have taken out of context. But aside from that, but I do respect what people are saying about they're still throwing us under the bus.
Yes. Yeah, I was quite frustrated with it myself because there was so much scaremongering, right? So Wes Streeting said something which was very both-sidey and trying to appease something, and the fact that he's done that's the part that needs to be condemned, rather than saying he said this thing inelegantly and it implies that trans people are going to be barred from hospitals, which is a big headline that I have seen in a couple of places, is that trans women could be barred from women's wards in hospitals, and it's like, you're kind of, the Streeting's given an inch and they've taken a mile and a half. Essentially, they've kind of really jumped onto it and scaremongered about it, I think.
Yeah, so many people I've seen on Twitter are just worried, sick.
Yeah.
I think you'll cause this sort of language which Wes has done is just caused a panic.
Basically.
It's not good enough.
No, it isn't. And you kind of, you're supposed to get media training, aren't you?
Yeah, some people may disagree with what I've been saying. But...
We're all entitled to our opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the delight of freedom of speech. And when I say delight, I mean curse.
Oh, exactly.
But yeah, to me, this does just seem like he's trying to play both sides, has done so very inelegantly, and more like mountains have been made out of it, essentially. Lots and lots of printer's ink, well, digital printer's ink, I suppose, has been expended talking about how this is dangerous for trans people. And the rhetoric of it, kind of, in a sense it is, but only in the sense that Streeting kind of seems to maybe not really know what he's talking about. And we've both seen quite a lot of comments about Wes Streeting on a personal level, which we're not going to bother repeating here. Because, oh boy, do people have their opinions.
Exactly. I think even us just not giving it, just sort of saying, we're going to discuss this on our pod, had a whole bunch of F-web streetings just appear on the bottom of a comment section.
Yeah, and honestly...
Just fair, but...
Well, that reaction, in a sense, is justified, isn't it? Because these people are the opposition, right? They're supposed to be opposite what the government are doing and saying and making things so hard for trans people. They're supposed to stand in opposition to that. That is their literal job, not making their job easier to repress and discriminate against trans people. You're not supposed to be handing them the rope, right? And that's where Wes Streeting has fucked it up, basically, because in trying to play both sides, he's thrown us under the bus, again, as Labour so often do, and it's just been so...
Exactly.
Why are we why are you still this bad?
Gosh, I think, what was it? I think in the one previous pod, I was like, I could run the Labour Party better. Or the Labour comms better or something.
Labour, if you're interested, tweet us at WhatTheTrans. No, I would not want to run comms.
I would not want that.
No, it sounds like a really unpleasant job to have to do, / to do as a job kind of thing. It's the sort of thing where someone spends a few months or years working in comms and then they retire and move out to the country and start making cheese and keeping bees and stuff. Because, fuck all of that. I'm going to go do something else.
Cheese making in retirement does sound like a good retirement plan.
It does.
I'm afraid of bees. Well, not afraid of them, I mean bugs, but still.
There's that there's a whole Eddie Izzard bit about bees. Like, I want to be a beekeeper. I want to keep bees. I don't want to let them out. I don't want to let them go anywhere. I don't want to lend them to people. I want to keep them. I want to keep the bees. Although there is that film that's out at the moment, Jason Statham, The Beekeeper, and it's an action film basically where this woman who owns Jason Statham's house, his landlady basically, gets scammed out of a load of money and dies, and he goes on a murderous rampage of revenge. Using, I've no doubt, a lot of bee-related puns, like revenge has a sting.
Oh, there's no actual bee-induced murder.
Well, there might be. I don't know. I've not seen the film,
Spoilers.
but that's a thing, and when that's appropriately out, I'm sure we're going to go and see it and laugh at it and think, oh, that was ridiculous. Anyway, let's go and have some food.
Yeah. For those who will see it, please comment down below.
Yes. I'm definitely going to watch that film and then eat some delicious honey.
Let's hope it's not expensive, because otherwise that'll sting.
Oh, God, you are so fired. No.
Twice in that, 2 episodes in a row.
Two episodes.
It's now going to be a thing where I'm fired every single podcast.
Yeah, let's make it a hat trick. I can fire you at least twice more before the 100th episode.
Yeah, exactly.
I jest, of course. However, so this thing with Wes Streeting is one part of the tapestry of Labour. And the thing is, the day after he said something stupid and or unforgivable, Keir Starmer said something else.
But on January the 31st, which is yesterday as we record this, Keir Starmer seems to have committed the Labour Party to a full trans-inclusive conversion therapy ban if they win the next election, according to The Express. He was speaking to LGBT plus Labour and said, "We'll implement a full trans-inclusive ban on all forms of conversion therapy," and then added, "We fully support the view that conversion therapy is psychologically damaging abuse." Which, yeah, it is. Well done for being on the same page as everyone else, Keir. Have a cookie. But given that with Labour Party, the transphobia is coming from inside the house, so we don't think we can stop worrying about the idea of gender-affirming healthcare being classed as conversion therapy by bad faith actors who are already involved with Labour, like Rosie Duffield and Laura Pascal.
Yes, indeed, because they're already there, and are they the only ones? Are they the only people involved with Labour who hold, trans exclusionary views?
Those horrid views. No, exactly. There's the Labour Women's Declaration, well known for giving their bags to Akua Reindorf at the LGB Alliance conference to help cheerlead how shit they are. There's like a dodgy amount of gender criticals who are still meeting with Labour ministers and causing things like a Wes Streeting incident to happen.
Conceivably. Yeah, we don't know who he's been talking to, do we? So we might say that Laura Pascal is too minor a person to be really involved on that level, but as in some people like her who hold those views are going to still be involved with Labour, and who the hell knows what they're getting up to behind the scenes.
I mean, we've heard about meetings previously with those kinds of anti-trans groups. I've been privy to some conversations that there are trans people who have been meeting with, even though it's not been published, but that's by the wayside. There's still gonna be, it still feels like there's more outnumbered by the anti-trans wankers who might still be meeting with Labour way too much in the first place.
Yes, indeed.
Because who knows, they may be trying to put their contingency plans in place to muddy it up with Labour, because even with 4 years in power, they can still cause a lot of damage.
Yes, they can.
And with support for trans people being as shaky as it is already compared to the full-throated support at the start of 2018 with the Conservative Party, in which it took the good 4 or 5 years, which we got right now, for them to muck that up, it could be skewed quite badly.
You could make the case that the kind of real campaign against trans people was present in the media from sort of 2016 onwards, because I remember dealing with this kind of uptick in hostility and aggression towards trans people when I was still on telly. However, that's a fairly minor point, but yes, you're quite right. It's not taken all that long for the nation's mind to be changed. As in, not literally every single person, obviously, but enough. But it does, so we have seen various articles, including the Pink News article, it must be said, that this ban's gonna include any therapy that denies that someone is trans, or that being trans doesn't exist, and you're just confused, or whatever else. That kind of therapy is conversion therapy. Yeah, or well, it will be. It's not banned right now, and that's
No, it's not right now.
That's part of the problem.
God, we're trying, but no, because there's still that private members bill in Parliament as well that's might or might not, or God knows what's happening with that one that seems to be rumbling on the background. That's got a reading in March, I believe.
Is that in the Commons or the Lords?
I think it's the Commons, but it was brought by the Lords.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of
like
course.
The second reading, I believe.
Yeah, I get you.
'Cause it was like brought by a Labour Lib Dem. It's like it was even brought by a cross-party group of Lib Dem, Tory, and
We covered it in a previous episode, didn't we?
just wind back to that one. But yeah, this was following a visit from the LGBT History Month folk to talk about LGBT History Month, I think it was. Which happy LGBT History Month, everyone.
Yes, Merry February.
I think when I posted about LGBT History Month and, oh yeah, what should we cover in the pod for this? People were like, isn't that in July? I'm like, no, that's Pride. So that's always a fun one to get.
Oh, okay. The Private Members Bill, a debate took place on December the 6th, and the Private Members Bill was introduced by Labour MP Lloyd Russell Moyle, and that was episode 95 of What the Trans. So this doesn't appear to have been Keir Starmer leaping into damage control mode after Wes Streeting said his sputtered all over Sky News.
Spotted is a good way of putting it.
Yes. This is something that's been in place for a little while because it is LGBT History Month. And just on the subject of LGBT History Month, we will be doing a few things over the course of February for, looking into some things from the past, as is our wont from time to time. But not this time, not this episode.
But yeah, I suppose we'll have to see how it goes. But I think we'll have to see what Future Us has to say in either the next episode, if something randomly just pops up, or, well, inevitably pops up in a future episode full stop.
Yes, indeed, as it so often does.
And on that note, I think we'll probably get into talking about, well, we'll probably get to the end of the show's spiel, but I think before we do that, before we talk about the other social medias, we're planning to open up our Discord again, so we're going to share out the link, because we've got a Discord, if those didn't know. We haven't really openly shared it too much, but we've sort of looked at the idea of sharing things out a bit. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our Discord in the description of this podcast. So if you want to join, please check it out. We're also looking to bring in some more mods, so in the announcements section of our Discord, there should be a form you can fill in to do an application to become a moderator. So hopefully when we get more people in, we have one or two extra mods to help.
Yes, when you said, we're looking for some extra mods, it's like, we're looking for some more people with scooters in parkers listening to swinging 60s. But wrong sort of mods.
Well, we'd love some extra modifications like that. We can chat about that on the Discord as well.
Yes, that's a whole other kind of mod, isn't it? But yes, that's us. That's our show. Thank you so much for tuning in. Slightly shorter episode this time, but sometimes it do just be like that. Obviously, you can catch us on our website, whatthetrans.com, where you'll find all the references and the stories we use putting this episode together. We are, of course, on Facebook, Twitter. What's the other one we're on? Twitch?
Oh, Threads.
Threads, not Twitch. Twitch is a whole other thing. And if you are interested in perhaps helping us put things together, helping to support us, to let us get out and about and get interviews and be able to go and see things and, get technology as and when it becomes required, you can support us on Patreon. So patreon.com/whatthetrans. But thank you so much for listening, and we will be back in 2 weeks with episode 99. And we've got something jolly exciting for episode 100, don't we? But more on that
so
later.
Much to announce.
Oh yes, many, many things. But we'll speak to you in 2 weeks, and thank you for listening. Goodbye. Bye. This episode of What the Trans was written and produced by Ashley Talbot and Alex Bedwell and was edited by Ben Swithin. And we would especially like to thank all our producer-level Patreons, who are
Jay Hoskins,
Trowan,
Ashley,
Matty B,
Squid Zena,
Setcap,
Jane,
Roberto DePrunk,
Rose Absolute,
Sarah,
Catherine Halkett,
Sina,
Kiki T,
Derek,
Sky Kalane,
Eric Widman,
B,
Jude,
Monsieur Squirrel,
Fergus Evans,
Anubis a Jackal,
Kamina,
Brandon Craig,
Break the System,
Sean Phillips,
Heidi Reardon,
Ezra,
Sophia the Sixth,
Lentil,
Philippa Taprook,
Alethea Aurora,
Sadie Chagall,
Clara Volume,
Amelia,
Corvina Ravenheart, the trans metal DJ from Twitch and VR chat, will play Saint Lucifer for props.
Fiona McDonald,
Torikuso H.
Murgatroyd,
Ontologically Unjust.
Stella,
Cindergoza.
Rebecca Prentice,
Crazy Richard.
Dan Oblivion,
Florence Stanley.
Helen _
Chrissy Jarvis.
If stranger casts barkskin on himself, is that akin to blackface to a treant?
Nick Ross.
Alice Chalkley,
Melody Nix.
Fiona Punchard,
John.
Nick Duffy,
CB Bailey.
Gordon Cameron,
Ted Delphos.
Wen Riverup,
Vic Parsons.
Tila Wild,
Patreon user.
Vic Kelly,
Catherine.
Sabrina McVeigh,
Cassius Adair.
Melissa Brooks,
Ian Kuma.
Karakan12,
April Heller.
Sophie Lewis,
Alexandra Lilly.
Claire Scott,
Ariadne Pena.
Lauren Onions,
Bernard's Pink Jelly Bean.
Lanos.
Chris Hubley.
Thank you to you all.